So I think most of you are familiar with the idea of the two paths in spirituality, the two paths to enlightenment or to gnosis. One of them is direct, and the other one is much slower and gradual. Both paths are equally valid as far as I'm concerned. The faster path is sometimes called satori, and it's an instantaneous flash of realization, uh, and I think it's rare in the West. It's I think that the Eastern mind is more geared toward this more direct path, and I think part of the reason is because of their culture and um, the way they're dispersed throughout their lands. I think that they're more uh, closer together. They live more in maybe more in villages. They're more communal, and they have this. They already have this kind of sense of unity. So it's not as difficult for them, I think, for the instant path. Um, but for us Westerners, especially here in the United States, it's our minds are just not geared to that, and that is because of partly, I believe, because uh, we're more we're more dispersed. Well, especially in the United States, because we when we colonized, you had people that moved out with just their families out into the West. They moved west. You had this idea of rugged individuality. Uh, so so we don't have that sense of community that they have, the communal sense. Um, we're we feel probably more of a sense of separation, uh, ego, and that makes it more difficult to fall into that unitive state. So one thing I noticed, and this is basically why I wanted to do this video, is because I noticed that there's similarities between that instant path and and um, the idea of salvation through grace or faith. Uh, and I think what's behind that, the idea of salvation by by faith, it's instant. Uh, it doesn't take great effort. It's not works. I think so. What's behind that, I believe, is a maybe an intuition uh, that that more direct path is possible. Um, so I'm not saying that it is the same thing. It's not the same thing. I'm trying to find a correlation. Um, Perhaps it's a memory uh, of a time where uh, salvation was more, or realization or salvation was more instantaneous. Uh, for example, there were certain cults who, when they baptized, they would hold the initiate. They would hold the initiate underwater uh, until they would pass out. Um, and if they survived it, they would maybe come back with an experience of a near death experience, which we all are. I don't need to elaborate on what that is. So they would have this. They would feel born again, literally. They had the instant realization. Uh, but now it's not so much. I mean, there probably are people who, in the Protestant traditions, who believe in the faith alone, grace alone. um, who have an experience. Maybe they've had an experience, and then they have that framework uh, where they can go through the baptism, because for them, for a lot of them, baptism is not in itself salvific. It's an outward sign of an inward grace. Uh, so they would go to church every Sunday, and they would, you know, so that they could hold and remember that experience. But I think that's rare. I think a lot of them probably just believe and have faith in certain doctrines and dogmas, and just think that's the end goal. Uh, and I think that's the majority of us, that we haven't had that direct experience. Now, uh, looking at Catholicism, they do have that salvation through grace and faith, but also they have the sacraments. Um, so someone may have a Catholic may have that experience, mystical experience, and they can hold on to that um, through the sacraments. Or if they don't have that experience, they can through the sacraments they can build and go through that slower path, little by little. And again, I think that's most people. Um, uh, so in the East, um, and Alan Watts always talks about this, how the guru would have the student go through all this crazy stuff, only to realize that they can't do it, and then they would have it's all to trick them into having that instant flash. And the Zen koans, however you pronounce it, uh, are all designed to invoke that instantaneous realization. Um, and Alan Watts would always say, you're already there. What you seek is already within you. Uh, and also in the Gospel of Thomas, you'll find sayings like that. So if you read those like Zen koans, um, meditate on them, you may, that could spark an instant realization. Um, he would also say, you can't do it yourself. Uh, nothing you can do can bring about that instantaneous. Well, it's hyperbole what he was saying. He's, nothing you can do can bring about that salvific event, um, because you're already there. You just have to realize it. And it's hyperbole. It's hyperbole because, well, obviously you can do things. The guru has you do things to trick you. You meditate through meditation. You you maximize the chances that you'll have one of those experiences. Um, so, I and I love Alan Watts, and it almost seems like a contradiction for me, someone who is of a Catholic uh, Catholic leaning mind, uh, to be interested in somebody who says that rituals aren't the answer. But he does have a book called Myth and Ritual in Christianity. He kind of, I think he moved away from that later in his life, more toward Zen Buddhism. But and again, and this is because why I enjoy Alan Watts and am Catholic is because I think that both of these paths are very important, and we can utilize both of them. Now, in the Kabbalah, with its paths and Sephirah, um, by studying those, you can make connections in your brain. You can actually you're actually slowly molding your brain uh, and making it more conducive to having this experience. It's just, again, that's the slower path. And if you look at Freemasonry, in the one of the charges, it says um, uh, knowledge is attained by degrees. Well, gnosis, you can substitute the word gnosis. Gnosis is attained by degrees. It is also attained, can be attained instantly. And someone even Stefan Heller, I believe, in one of his homilies said that um, you know, one of his congregants approached him and says, I've been attending mass for years, and I don't have any gnosis." And Stefan Heller looked at him and said, "Are you sure?" And so you can be growing in gnosis and not realize it because it's so gradual. It's so gradual. Um, but you'll begin to notice things if you pay attention. If you are growing spiritually, you'll begin to notice synchronicities, maybe um, psychic dreams, meaningful dreams, psychic phenomenon, various things like that. Realizations, small realizations, um, maybe growing larger realizations eventually. Um, other ways that I believe that spontaneous mystical experiences can occur. Near-death experiences, which I've already talked about. Um, Stressful times in your life that where you don't have a near-death experience, but maybe like a somebody in war, in the midst of war, uh, they'll it's such a stressful situation where they leave their body and they can see themselves. They didn't actually get injured and had a near-death experience, but they've actually left their body and they can see themselves from above, or various things like that. Psychedelics can certain like especially dimethyltryptamine and 5-methoxy dimethyltryptamine can um, cause instant realizations, certainly. Um, and being out in nature, one could have a spontaneous mystical experience. Uh, Now, uh, experiences had in those ways are are difficult to integrate if you don't have a framework, if you don't have a religious framework to put them in. You could forget. You could forget your experience, or it could have less impact on you. So if you have a framework, or a religious framework in which to put these things in, you can better hold these states. Um, and I think that with the slower method, you're more likely to hold on to these because your brain is rewiring and things like that. So that's just my theory. Um, that the slower experience, the slower method, is more conducive to long term, uh, holding it in the memory for long term, whereas the direct method could be forgotten if you're not careful. And oh, I want. Hmm, let me see if I can find it. There's something I wanted to read. Um, okay. Let me just bear with me for a moment. I'm going to put this on pause. Okay. This is a quote. I can't. This is very small. I can't read it. This is a quote from Spirit Builders by Palamas, and he writes, "As our points chod, I'm pronouncing that wrong, empowerments move their way to the head of the body. This flowering of the mind, this state of pure and unfiltered consciousness, draws nearer and nearer. It is attainable in each step of the way. Each degree has built within it a secret door to this samadhi. Every point chod is a power zone which can open the lotus immediately. We often realize by degrees, but we may attain in an instant. All of our spirit workings converge in the knowledge that pure consciousness, pure unity, pure Advaita is available in a moment's notice without any of our diverse workings. The prerequisite is simply a unified mind and body. Again, that's what the studying the Kabbalah can help with, unifying everything. Um, a unified mind body, our creation of the scintillating body, working within the mystic temple in free communion with others, is simply offering 97 opportunities of oneness. This is the primitive doctrine in action. So this that combines both of those things that I'm talking about all in one uh, paragraph. It's very nice. I just happened to see that. Somebody posted that a few weeks ago, and part of the inspiration for me to write to do this video. So how do I want to conclude this? I think I've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to talk about. And there's a quote by Alan Watts that he quotes, I think it was William Blake, the fool who persists in his folly becomes wise. So if all that we're doing with our rituals, our degrees, all of these things, if we are just fools persisting in our folly, at least at some point, we will become wise. Thank you for listening, and have a great rest of your day.